All right, the Nigerian elections are on Saturday, and in a field of 18 candidates vying for the presidency, there is only one woman running. Joining us again is Ibijoke Faborode, co-founder and executive director of ElectHER, to talk to us about how to empower more women in Nigeria to run for office. So even though, Ibijoke, there is just one woman vying for the presidency. I mean, she doesn't really have a major political profile in Nigeria. Many people haven't even heard of her. But even though there's only one woman, do you think that the acceptance of female candidates in Nigeria is growing?
Yes, I do. Although we still have the systemic barriers, but I think that over the past 2 to 3 years, we've seen a lot of life-changing, time-defining moments in Nigeria. From the NSAS campaign, essentially, where women were really in charge of the infrastructure that backs the campaign. I think people were no longer questioning the competency of women. It was more like in that moment in time, everyone came together. And I think that, for the younger population, that has been, a really good point of integration. But you're also seeing, a lot of technocrats come out, not in the strength that we want, but there is a shift. And I like to use incremental growth. It might not be what we want. And I think that is going to translate. It's going to translate over time. Nigeria's problem is a very complex problem. It's been going on for so long historically. And so I think that, if people were resilient enough to see this election through, we're going to see a pivotal change in 2027 and 2031. So we're really just waiting for, to see what the outcome of the election will be. The numbers are down, but the consciousness is growing. Yeah.
I wanted to, I was in Nigeria roughly around this time last year, and I remember the major sort of breaking news story at that time was the fact that Parliament had rejected 5 bills that sought to advance gender equality across the country. I mean, women especially, obviously, were outraged by that. And it was things like, making sure that a Nigerian woman, that if she married a foreign husband, if she had a foreign husband, that he too could become a Nigerian citizen. It was also about there being sort of quotas for female representation in elected office, that sort of thing. When that failed, I mean, we talk about the fact that the NSAS movement has really encouraged young people to come out and vote this time around. Do you think that because of those gender bills failing this time last year, that we're seeing more women have the determination and resolve to come out and vote or to seek some kind of political change?
Absolutely. Zain, you really took the words out of my mouth. Now, so here's the thing. It's a game of numbers. You had 5 gender-centric bills thrown out of the National Assembly on the first day of the International Women's Month. That was a huge blow. Nigeria being the giant of Africa, because we currently rank 54 out of 54 on women's representation of parliament. But then I think people are beginning to understand that it affects everyone. Our social infrastructure is down at the moment. Maternal mortality rate, the healthcare system is dilapidated. Financial inclusion for women is on the low. And so people will actually ask a lot of fundamental questions. But when you can get basic rights to your ownership and your identity, you'll actually marry your partner, to have your name or to have a passport, then that is the problem. So people, I think, we're beginning to channel the energy. And as I always say, I think it's less agonizing and more organizing now, because we understand that the infrastructure that drives the policy mechanism in the country is led by men. And so if we want things to change, if we want the issues of women to be prioritized, then we need to see more women, because you can't lead from the outside. You need to be on the inside. And at the Nigerian parliament, it's a game of numbers. It's either you're for or you're against. And, what we saw in March was that people were against the bill, regardless of how we want to put it. So I think that sets a very strong signal to people. Just, complaining about this is not enough. We need to get the women to win. And that's why, the work that ElectHER is doing is so important when it comes to resource mobilization, and essentially just backing women to really get to the end of the race. Yeah.
And Ibijoke, one of the questions I was trying to ask you before the break, obviously we had issues with your microphone, was this idea of sort of the female voting bloc in Nigeria. I mean, I live in America, and here the voting bloc of suburban women, for example, is quite a significant voting bloc that both parties in this country really try hard to pursue. It sort of seems as though the sort of female voting bloc in Nigeria is somewhat of an afterthought. It's not something that, I mean, you can tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not something that the major political parties have tried to pursue aggressively. Are there any signs that that's beginning to change?
I think it's beginning to change gradually, and I'll tell you why. Now, I think women are much more conscious that, look, we have this powerful block we haven't really been leveraging, and we need to essentially leverage it as much as we can do. Because if the men are not listening, and we need to then ensure that the power of the vote that we have can essentially get us to negotiating tables as well. So I think in the past, because women didn't really understand the strength of the numbers they had, women didn't really understand that the control, not only do they control the economy, they also control the voting bloc, because they're about half of the voting population. But I think that because now you have some access to more data, you have some organizations really putting this data at the forefront of policy, it's becoming very evident. But one thing you've also seen change recently is a lot of women in formal sectors, the private sector, are becoming much more conscious about politics, and they care about data. And with the availability of data, there's much more wisdom and intelligence in the space as well. So I think people are going to channel this into essentially advocating for women and coming to the negotiation table. I'll tell you something. Just earlier this year, we partnered with Chimamanda Adichie and another organization that drives women in career. And together we had a fundraising event for candidates, female candidates that were running. Now, we didn't have a lot of that in the past, but now we understand the strength in our numbers, and we know that one of the things that would actually get us to really change the debt in the inclusion of women that we have at the moment is to come together as a binding force, as a strong ecosystem, to really negotiate power for women and ensure that we have a strong resource base for women as well. All of that, and all of them, with the political parties and the stakeholders, respect the powerful women bloc that we are.
I mean, yeah, it's fascinating because, we're out of time now. One of the things I was going to talk about was this idea of women who actually do stand for office in Nigeria facing so many barriers, including violence, by the way. Many female candidates have actually experienced violence. And also, they're many times they're told to step aside for a male candidate to emerge at the forefront of a political party as well. Fortunately, we are out of time. I wish you the best of luck tomorrow. I wish Nigeria the best of luck tomorrow as well. I think everybody needs it. Ibijoke, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Zain. Thank you so much. Bye. Yeah.